Alrighty, guys, we are here. We are back in the studio. We got ourselves, we got Rip, we got Ricky and Chris, and our special guest right here. We got
the better Chris,
the captain Chris, as we would know.
C.
Oh, Chris with a C.
Chris with a C, the way God intended.
I'm the weird Chris.
So yeah, you are the owner of Captain's Auction Warehouse.
Yes.
Which, funny enough, I've heard your business thrown around that name long before I met you. I've just kind of like heard it thrown around in the retro scene, you know, not knowing too much about it. So maybe tell the world what it is you do and what's your world.
Well, I guess, you know, I mean, the world, this is, how can you encompass the world that I come from in, I don't know, a couple of minutes? Do I have like 1 minute?
You got as much time as you
Yeah,
need.
you can do whatever you need to do.
See, it all started back when Chris was born with a C. And, you know, he was a hustler from the get. I'm just kidding. That's for him. But really, I mean, out of this troop here, like, I think I've known you, Chris, with a K for a few years, right?
Probably 7 or 8 years, because
Yeah.
I was bringing you machines when I moved out to California about 8 years ago, and I started bringing machines to your
I
auction.
think, we met because it impressed me. The first game he brought, I'm just going to go off top, whatever.
Do your thing, bro.
So when I met him, it was like first game came in. I think it was still dripping wet too.
I was.
He brought this like food fight. I think it was a food fight game or something. It was like,
I brought in a
here's
Mappy.
an amazing game. Maybe it was Mappy.
Mappy was
It started
pretty
with
bad.
Mappy because
love
Mappy was
Mappy.
really
Yeah.
Mappy was really bad, but you know, I mean, it was good because it's freshly painted, so it was like almost still dripping. It was like, here's a classic original Mappy. You can sell it. And we were talking and stuff, and I remember we were chopping it up, and I just liked the attitude, the name, and the personality. But I got to looking at the game later. I was kind of like, I think this is kind of waterlogged. You know?
Subpar work.
It was like, okay.
So
you
walk
know,
me through that. He brings in the arcade.
brings in the arcade.
When do you
sign it
sell
all
it
up.
for him? How does that work?
Well, you know, he brings in the arcade, leaves it with me, get to know him a little bit, and then he takes off. And then I have my next auction, which it was probably like 2 weeks later.
How often are they? How often are they?
So the auctions that I operate, they're about every 6 weeks.
Okay.
5 to 6 weeks, 500 to 600 games, 300 pounds per game, 600 games, 18,000, 180,000 pounds worth of games that move in and move out over the course of a 5-week period. So we have this kind of rotisserie of games that come in, like Chris's game. They'll be coming in, getting ready for an auction, and we still have stuff going out from the previous. So about every 5 or 6 weeks, we can handle it.
And I'll just hop in on that. When I dropped off that game, and I'll talk about your operation for a minute. It is a massive operation. Like, how many square feet do you take now?
Total 2 buildings at about 48,000 square feet.
Wow.
Packed
Property in
full
Orange County.
of arcade and pinball machines. So when I drop off one lonely little game, it's like you have a sea of games. It's amazing that you run through those games every 5 weeks.
Every 5 weeks, we do. I mean, all the games that come in, unless there's a falling out, which there's very few fallouts, but they all sell. We sell them all. They move right on out. I got it's not just me. I got like 10 people that work for me there. So handling paperwork, and then all your move outs is, 300-pound games. And, we get games, half the games I would say are like your FEC style. Like you go to Dave & Buster's, any of those places. I mean, these things are like structures. You got this room. I got games that are almost the size of this room that they put together just for the auction. And then they got to take them apart to get them ready to ship out.
The Tomb Raider that you had when I picked up a PlayStation 1 kiosk that I bought at auction.
Oh, that's where you got it from.
Yeah,
Yeah.
from Captain's Auction. Because there was a few kiosks that ran, but the Tomb Raider that you had in there, the thing is about 20 feet long.
Well, if you put 2 of them together, yes. But I mean, on the realistic, they are 118-inch monitor screen.
Okay.
So 118, almost probably as wide as in here.
So that's 10 feet. Yeah,
and
about this
then
big.
it's gonna
15
be-
feet, maybe?
How much do those? Because I see there's like
10
the
feet
Halo
tall.
ones, the Walking Dead crossbow ones. I mean, what do these things weigh?
Well, they're about 1,200 pounds. We just sold a Halo 4-player, which you'd see in any of those
That's a great
big
game.
FECs. A great game.
It is a good
but
game.
it's like dual 60-inch monitors with a centerpiece, and then you've got 2 double fixed gun shooter areas, like 2 pits with 4 seats. So when you set this structure up, it comes apart in like 24 pieces. But altogether, it's probably, I'm going to say 1,900, 2,000 pounds.
Jeez.
When you have all that iron, all the metal, all the plastic, wood all together. And then we set all that up, right? And then we take it down after the sale.
Wow.
And we'll usually help whoever it is that bought it put it on their truck. So
How long have you been doing this?
since 1999. So if you do the math backwards, whatever that is, what year is it now? 2029. So
years.
25 years.
Dang,
25
I
years.
couldn't do that.
That was pretty easy math, but none of us could do it. I just see everybody like slowly.
I was
looking
going
around,
backwards.
like-
I was thinking, well, it's 2029, and I was going to minus some years off there. So yeah.
What
5
got
years,
you into
25.
like this whole giant? Because
Well,
that's a big operation.
Yeah, like what led up to it, like you being into the auctions?
Well, okay, so I'll go back. Start with my fascination for games, right? So in 1977, before anybody here was even, right?
Ben's
1977.
close.
Yeah, Ben's
Are you?
the
Okay.
1950s.
So cool. So, I come up in the arcades, and there was a skate park.
Sick.
And I started playing all those old classic games from 77, 78. They were rolling out brand new. I was 12. And so, arcade games and pinball machines were kind of like in my purview, give or take since 77. Obviously, I couldn't do business then, but I was an entrepreneur in other areas, which kind of gave me the savvy to see when there was an opportunity to start selling games. I got into it like realistically in, I'm going to say 94, 95. I had some opportunity to go and buy some games. It was through like an auction, right? I was working with my pops. I'll call him my pops. He's kind of like my surrogate dad, whatever. And we have this kind of like community center, and there was a little babysitting room. And he told me, because I'm a hustler, he told me, hey, I saw this sign down the road that said arcade auction. Why don't you go there and see if you can get some games for the kids? And I was like, all right, I'll do that. And so I went to this auction, and immediately I start angling around, and I bought some games, and I met the owner of the auction, started talking to him, and got these games, put them in for the kids. And then it was like, worked so well. It's like, I'll go back next month and buy some more games. And, within 2 months, I was already friends with everybody who worked at the auction, the front office, them people. I got to know the owner. I wanted to get into a part of the business that was budding, because between 94 and 96, if you remember, 1996, I believe, eBay was probably a year old, maybe?
I think that's right.
And people were already selling video games on eBay, right? And I saw these people at the auction. They'd buy and they'd sell, and they'd take them to eBay. And then I'd ask them about, what do you do to move that stuff cross country? And think this is like the 90s, right? And they would take their games, these full-size games, and they would put them in their truck, take them to LA or Hawthorne to Forward Air Station, right? They'd get them weighed,
Wow.
measured, then they'd build a crate, right?
Ship them out.
Take them back to Forward Air. I mean, it was this whole like process they were doing. And at the time, when I'm doing this hustle for the kids' room and all that stuff, I worked at a warehouse. I managed warehouses and did things. It was another life. And what I did do, though, was I had the ins on shipping industry. So what I did was I started offering a shipping service to these guys that are selling on eBay. I go to the auction, and I made my own packet and everything. And I had a buddy who said, you should have a name for like your business, right? So I'm like starting this thing without even really knowing it. And so he goes, well, you're going to be a shipper, so maybe you're a captain.
There it is.
And,
I
I'm
was
like,
gonna ask you that, how that
and
came
he's
about.
all, and he immediately went, Captain Chris.
Ha!
And I was like, yeah, all right,
It's a cool name too.
let's do it.
It is a really good
and
name.
And I started blowing that business up.
So
I mean,
do you only deal in like that field for games, or do you do all types of shipping and all that stuff and auctioning?
well, I do all types of shipping now, because I've got a couple of businesses, some warehousing, that's boring stuff, but I've got companies that they leave their product in my warehouse, and then I've got employees that actually ship. So I do different shipping for other people. It's like a third-party logistics deal.
You know what?
No, I'm just
Hey,
kidding.
what
Don't
a, no.
Illegal drug smuggling.
I'm not going to be able to edit that out, Chris.
With the games though, it was like I got to know some people, and it really, in shipping the games for people, I was working at this place, and I'd take all their games, so I was getting more familiar with a lot of the stuff that was coming out and everything, because I'd kind of dropped out of the game scene a little bit. I was managing warehouses, and I was working for this shoe company, an athletic shoe company. Anyways, so in that, I started getting familiar with the games, and then I started seeing some opportunities for me to sell games. And so I was selling on eBay, and running my Captain Chris shipping, and I was just hustling my way through.
Yep.
And, all that time, I get up to like 1999, that auction house, there was this guy, an infamous guy who ran an auction company that I was working for. And I told him, I said, you go out on the road all the time. You have this open building here. I said, what you're going to do is you're going to give me this building to run all month long. And then you do your auction. I'll help you set it up and everything. So I basically told this guy, this is what I'm going to do with your building. And he bought it. He bought into it. He's like, all right, cool. And so I started selling on eBay, and I was making inroads with different operators and people in the coin op community, because not just collectors, but I've been a big advocate in the coin op community, like people who are operating games all over the place. And I made friends with a guy who was operating in movie theaters and had pinball machines. And at the time, I sold a Medieval Madness pinball machine, which was the top of... It broke the records on eBay for pinball machines.
Still kind of is,
Do you
isn't it?
remember the number?
Well, the number at the time, 1999, I believe it was $6,500 for Medieval Madness. And pinballs back then were like, the premium ones you find now, they were like $1,500, $1,800. Like even new from distributors when they came out.
Yeah.
In the 90s, $1,800 was your equivalent to what? $6,500 now. Like $1,800 was a lot of money back then. And so to sell a medieval for $6,500, I put up like 36 pictures. I did all this stuff that was just kind of different in that community. And, in selling some of those games, my eBay name was Captain's Auction Warehouse. That was my store that I created on eBay. And I just kept that with me. So basically 1999, Captain's Auction Warehouse was born. Captain Chris was born a lot earlier than that. And then everything just kind of morphed from there.
Wow.
There's a big spot between 99, 2000 to, let's say, 2008. There was I did a lot of world traveling and game buying and procuring and all this stuff.
What's the most expensive thing ever sold at Captain's Auction?
Ooh.
In your recollection.
In my recollection, the most expensive item I sold was the Sega, the R360, which is the Sega G-Lock.
I was there for that auction.
Yeah.
What did it sell for?
That was
20,000? 15?
65,000. 65,000.
Oh wow, I'm way off. Maybe I didn't realize it went for that much.
$65,000.
That was like the rotating. It's like a
it almost looks
gyroscope
like a
thing.
time machine.
Yeah,
I
I
look at it
was
like
at
a
that
time
auction
machine.
in person.
Which one?
The one when you sold the G-Lock thing. I was there. Unless it was an older one. You had one that was there. Maybe it wasn't a working
Well,
one.
at the museum, we had one. It was 65,000, and I still have that machine.
I was at one auction where there was like a gyroscoping Sega machine. It's got to be that G-Lock.
May have been.
Maybe it was
it's
like
the
3 years ago?
The only one I sold was 2021.
Oh yeah, so 3 years ago.
So that
That's
was
the
at
one.
the Banning Museum. And there's a few. There's like your sit down.
That's
one.
not it, Curtis. No.
Yeah, it would be the R360.
It's like a round.
So if you say
R?
It looks-
R360,
Are you able to show that, Ben? Oh, he is. Good job, Bento.
Yeah, it looks like it does
There
look
it
like a
is.
time machine.
That's an
I've
R360.
seen that. Wait, I think Retro Ralph did a video.
He probably did. There's one at Galloping Ghost.
You know Retro Ralph?
I do.
Okay, he's a good
Yeah, I
buddy of
know
mine,
Ralph.
too.
Yeah, Ralph's a great guy.
He is.
He's insane with a pinball bug now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I had him on
He's-
FaceTime the other day. I went in the backyard for my day job,
Sorry,
which I won't name. And this guy said, hey, he had some arcades in the backyard. And I was like, do these work? He's like, I don't know. They've been out here for a year. And I was like, I'll take them. So I went and took them. And one of them worked, the Marvel vs. Capcom, and just plugged right on and worked.
Oh,
And-
yeah, cool.
And the other one, Ben helped me just take out all the boards to sell them. So all the
I have one of my guys that does that too. He gets called around and
Yeah.
picks games up out of yards and
Yeah.
stuff. He's like, boom, he's on it.
When you
Sweet.
mentioned that you bought an arcade cab, my question was, like, when you were younger, do you remember what the first arcade cab was that you purchased to like sell?
Yes, it was a Pac-Man actually. The first two games I remember, it was a yellow Pac-Man, the original, and it was nice too. I mean, it was obviously in used condition. It had a little bit of hand wear because everybody, well, right-handed was like, you know, you play with your left or whatever. I sold that on eBay. That was my first game that I purchased. Second game was Blasteroids.
Yeah.
Blasteroids.
Blasteroids was the follow-up to Asteroids. It's a
Yeah.
color CRT monitor.
I'm going to look it up.
Is that the
Very
button
cool
one?
game. It's got buttons and it's got a dial. It's
Okay.
got a Tempest dial on it, like the game Tempest.
Yeah.
Similar dial to that. Not very popular for some reason, but I actually like the game.
I'm not a huge fan of it. I don't like it. I don't like
Well,
it.
you know, I mean, it was, it was not the popular one.
Okay,
I mean, it went Asteroids because it got away from the vector monitor.
I like asteroids. I don't like blasteroids.
Yeah, the graphics look weird on it. They don't look like.
Well, they
Asteroids is
are
a true
weird,
vector
and
game.
I mean, most people say it was a fail. You
Hey,
know,
what's the
the
Holy
cabinet. The
Grail?
cabinet's kind of like wonky. and
What I
everything,
want to
but-
know is what's the Holy Grail? What's
Of-
the big value of like
arcades
arcade?
or
Where you
pinballs?
see it, you're just going to automatically.
Well,
create
you know,
your
I
pants.
think the Holy Grail is subjective. Like, I mean, it's,
Okay,
it
money
is.
wise. Money wise.
Well, I
If you
mean,
see it,
a
you know you're
Holy
buying a new
Grail
car.
would be the game you always wanted for the least amount of money.
I'll tell you my
right?
holy grail of arcade machines: Super Spy Hunter.
What's that worth?
Maybe $2,000 now.
I don't wanna hear it.
2,500.
I'm talking.
What?
We just said
How
that
much
one
for
just sold for
Spy Hunter?
$60K. What are we talking about
Spy
2
Hunter?
grand for?
Yeah, the stand-up
Brokey.
Spy Hunter arcade
I think a
machine.
pinball machine sells
500
for that. Why
Valley,
not?
right?
Yeah, the stand-up
We
one.
just sold one.
Not a pinball machine.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
The upright. We
Yeah.
just sold one at auction 2 months ago.
Don't tell me it's cheap now.
No, it was like 6,000.
$6,000.
Yeah,
Okay.
Well, I was
They
saying
were like $2,000.
I was saying you walk into a backyard in the middle of Iowa, and they say you can have all these arcade machines. They're $50 a pop.
And I see the
What's-
one in the back
What's
over
the
there.
one that you're like, oh, that's going to buy me a new car?
Probably an Atari Color Vector, and I would say it'd be like an iRobot or Major Havoc.
I've
Are
never
they
heard
worth
of those.
big money?
They're worth pretty big money.
I've never
That's-
heard of
Are
those.
those like
don't know what that
70s
is.
machines or 80s?
No,
What
they'd
is
be
it?
like 80, 82, 83. Now, Star Wars, remember Star Wars arcade, right? And then there was the
Return of the Jedi?
Return of the Jedi.
I have one of those.
So that Return of the Jedi cabinet is what your iRobot or your Major Havoc are in. It's kind of
Yeah.
like a pedestal monitor
Yeah.
style.
Is it the
But
sit-down
then-
one?
No, it's an upright.
Okay.
And it'll have like a drum trackball, almost like a trackball, but it's shaped like a drum, and that's on your Major Havoc. Yeah, it's
What's the value?
well, once again, subjective. Probably I've heard, I haven't sold, $15,000 to $20,000.
Okay.
See, my Super Spy Hunters, it's a pretty rare machine. To find.
you-
What do Paperboys
Well,
go
what
for
is
now?
Super Spy Hunter?
Maybe it's not Super Spy Hunter, just Spy
Spy
Hunter.
Hunter.
I'm thinking Super Spy Hunter, the NES game, just Spy
Get your
Hunter.
stuff together, dude.
I don't even know what my grail is. What is Paperboy go for now? That's an
Last
expensive
one I
one.
had that was another probably 6,000.
6. Okay.
Really?
About 6,000.
Yeah.
keep thinking
Paperboy
it's
had
more.
the handlebars
Well,
on
you
it.
know, I'm conservative, but the numbers that I bring, it's kind of like real time. I mean,
Yeah.
in auction, in all fairness, you can get good deals, and 6,000 is actually going to be your 7,000, 7,500 by the time you're out the door, right?
Yeah.
I mean, come on, you guys all complain about it.
Oh, for sure.
Because I'm here. You know?
I bought a game. I bought a game off Chris on an auction site not too long ago, and they were like, "Oh, you got to pay this shipping fee and this
Yeah, you gotta
buyer
pay
fee." And I was like,
shipping,
"Stupid Chris."
buyer's premium, all that stuff. But you know, I mean, those are actually really like good numbers.
Yeah.
You know, we did the museum auction where there's like a paperboy that was. It had signatures from the entire design team. It had a gold placard on it. And of course that sold for like 12, 15,000 somewhere in there. If I'm right. Paperboy is another popular one. I'll tell you the one that everybody really wants and you just can't find because you can't, I guess they can't really rebuild it is 720.
I love 720.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm a skateboarder.
Skate or die. Yeah.
I'm a skateboarder, so that's my.
Yeah.
Is 720 the sequel to Skate or Die? Is it related at all to it? It's not.
Because
No,
there is
there's a Skate or Die
Because there
too.
is a Skate or Die too.
So 720 is a
Skate or
totally
Die
different.
2. Who makes
It was
that?
an NES game.
That's an NES
yeah.
game.
It's
No, I'm
NES.
talking Atari 720.
Yeah,
Full
720.
size, 25-inch medium res monitor. And it's got that inverted joystick on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's pretty hard to play.
Very hard
Is
to
that
play.
a $10,000 machine? Would you
I
say?
would say minimum.
Minimum 10.
It's
In
on
fact,
NES
if
too.
I had one, I probably wouldn't sell it for 10.
You don't see them that often
You
at
don't
all.
see them that often at all. Some people like the race games, Champion Sprint, Super
F-Zero?
Sprint. Those are cool and everything. Off road. Ivan
Oh, yeah,
Stewart
the
Off
four-player?
Road. Three-player game.
3-player.
Great game. Love that one. That was one that actually I
So
brought
good.
I brought that game into
good.
that kids babysitting room.
Yeah.
And some of the moms complained. They were like, well, they told my pops, who told me, he's like, oh, you're going to have to get that off-road out. I'm like, why? Well, Alan's in there, and he just plays, and he gets the nitro, and he keeps winning, and all he does is want to look at the bikini girls. And the moms are all offended by it.
I still remember the cutscenes from Cruising USA and the
Yep.
Big Buck Hunter game.
Oh, yeah.
I'd be like, oh, as a kid, like looking over, like, because it was like, FMV type graphics.
I think that's great, too. I'm
is
like,
awesome.
I was like, oh, okay, I'll remove the game. But yeah, I've always enjoyed, that's the payoff at the end, right?
100%.
But
it's your reward. Surprise.
It's your reward. Get it out.
Yep.
We get it out. Put some new games in. So there's always the little controversy.
Both of them are gonna. I want to ask a question. Who's it gonna be?
Would you say you're the largest arcade and pinball auction house in the country? And then second, would you say, if that's a yes, are you the largest in the world?
As far as I would know, as far as arcade and pinball auction house, I would probably say in the world.
In the world.
Yeah.
You are.
Yeah.
Wow.
I mean,
we just got our title.
And that's
Perfect.
well, people are like, oh, that's, but how can you say not? I mean, I don't know of any other place on the planet that's going to regularly have 600 to 700 arcade and pinball machines that are truly selling in an auction anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Me neither.
I've been to auctions.
Couldn't think of it.
There's auctions on the East Coast, auction game sales. Some of these other places.
Smaller, though.
They'll do, well, in the heyday, they would do on-site auctions with no internet, and you had to be there. And I've been to auctions where they've had 1,000+ games, and they sell them all in one day, but they'll have 2 or 3 pits going at the same time. They're walking down the lines. This guy's over here selling all these 19-inch. This guy's over here selling pinballs. So there's all this stuff going on. And I've gone there and watched it. But that's a totally different animal that happens every a few weeks. So, safe to say, and I don't say it with any kind of bragging rights. I'm not the world's greatest.
It's all right. The
hamburger.
title will say it. Don't worry.
But
I do like the fact that, I do believe that we are probably the largest in the world. And I mean, that's actually kind of cool.
I mean, that's an accomplishment for sure. I mean,
I know in the country we are, and I have a lot of guys that actually will buy games in bulk, and then they run smaller regional auctions where they're at, whether it's online, and people call me, oh, there's this new guy has popped up doing these auctions. I'll look him up and be like, I know him. It's like, I recognize those games.
how hard is it for you to not get those games and keep them when they come into your auction house?
As a collector?
As a collector.
As a collector, because I am a collector, but I try not to be to a fault. Like, I really enjoy them, And I think I try to get everything I can out of it personally for enjoyment until they go.
Yep.
And then I'm okay with it, right? I have a harder time with pinballs than I do with arcade games.
Yeah.
Letting go of them.
Yeah, letting go of them. Because I do like to collect.
Yep.
And I'm responsible enough and I know enough that, I can't keep them all. I can't hold them all. I went
the
through a
hard part about
period
this
with the
business.
pinballs. Yeah, it is. It is a very difficult and at the same time a great part of the business is, I got such a love for something.
Yeah.
And, I can be the guy, step up and let them go.
Yeah, even selling it has.
But, it's easier when I look at the light of, for the most part, everything that comes through my hands that I do let go is actually going to a good home that's going to use it.
Yeah.
And they've only got like a couple of games or a few games, or they have their own collection and they have their own sickness. They have their own whatever's going on. And I just know it's going to a good place. So I'm cool with it.
Yep.
If it was mine and I knew it was going off to the Never Land to be stripped down for parts or melted down for something, I probably wouldn't dig it as much.
Have you kept anything? Sorry, Chris, I don't mean to interrupt you, but you done it 7 times to me. No.
Ricky was going to ask a question earlier. You guys interrupted. I was like,
Okay, bro. Wait, Ricky was gonna talk?
Yeah,
I was gonna talk.
Do you have it still?
Yeah, I could actually ask him.
Let's go.
No, because he
He doesn't
kept
ask
saying
questions very often.
Okay.
he kept
that's
saying he
cool.
ships and everything. What's the farthest you shipped? Like, do you ship across the sea? Do you what's the farthest?
I've shipped across the ocean. Yeah.
And
actually, you go ahead and finish.
And
I want
what's
you to
the
finish.
price on something like that? Because I would think it's to be like an Arabian Prince or something. Like, yeah, I want that one.
There's a
The
lot.
Emirates order.
2K shipping. I'm like, oh,
Well, I'll tell you, I've actually arranged and shipped games to Saudi Arabia.
I was right.
I've shipped games back to Japan. Australia is another one.
Pretty far.
So the Australians and the Kiwis, which is New Zealand,
Yeah.
I tell them, yeah. It's they
never heard of
have to
that.
do their own thing. Those two, they got to do their own thing because of their import. They have some import laws that have to do with pesticides and wood and all that. So I just say, you guys handle it. They have their own collection points, and besides, the Australians, they're more, how you say, conservative in their prices they want to pay for shipping. So
Cheap.
cheap.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can say it.
Cheap bastard.
They're cheap, but them guys always got something hustling because the continent of Australia, right? They buy a lot of arcades and pinballs. They also buy cars and all kinds of stuff because, the population around that continent's huge, but everything's imported to Australia. I mean, they don't have a lot of production of much of anything that I know of except for Ugg boots.
And they probably didn't have
I think that's all they make. I don't,
they probably didn't have arcade and pinball machines in the 80s is my guess, right? There probably were none there.
Very few. In fact, it's funny you said Australia, and I'll get back to finishing with your question too. Australia, I just dealt with some Aussies. I was at Pinball Expo in Chicago, and I held an auction there for the guy who runs Expo. I don't normally do a lot of like off-site auctions. There's just too much. There's logistics, and then you've got the internet, and I've got my customers in this whole like, you got to get it out of here.
Yeah.
And everybody on the internet's like, I don't know where they're at. How are they going to get? Anyways, so there's an Australian pinball company. They made the first licensed Star Wars pinball machine, Empire Strikes Back. And for the life of me, maybe it's selective. I can't even remember that company's name right now. But if you Googled it, you can look him up. The Empire Strikes Back pinball, and his name starts with an H. And I got to know the name because I want to say this.
Pinball? It's pinball, you said?
It is pinball. Hankin. Yes, Hankin.
I've never heard of that.
Hankin Pinball. I sold one of those, the Empire Strikes Back.
Dang, it looks awesome.
That does look amazing.
Look at the cover art on it with the
And-
black.
Absolutely.
swirl.
And it was like, it's black. It has the infinity glass.
Dang, with Darth Vader on it.
So check this out.
Whoa.
That infinity glass is kind of like Space Invaders pinball, where infinity glass, you see the vision all the way back, right? That's the way the lighting is. so it kind of looks like a runway. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Oh, that does
But it's Darth Vader with flames behind him.
That's a good.
I mean, it's really
That
cool.
thing is
and there is
incredible.
a picture that's Mark Hamill that proves that was a licensed game. And apparently, George Lucas gave Hankin permission. He said, okay, you can use the license to do this, but I want a pinball. That's all I want out of it.
No way.
So he gave him a pinball out of that deal. The pinball actually plays cool. It's kind of like Space Invaders meets Star Wars. It actually says Empire Strikes Back on the playfield also, which is really cool. So Hank and Company was there at Expo, and they brought like 4 or 5 pinballs there. They had some in the free play room, but then they wanted a deal to bring one in and put it in the auction, which they did. They made a deal. I sold the game. I really honked it up. I actually brought the buyers that were there online, honked up the game, bang, bang, bang. And
That's what I like to hear. Honk it up. Dude.
I did. And I did a fantastic job. We barked it up, got them top. I think it brought, I'm going to say they netted out, it's like just under $12,000 for that pinball, right? So he made a deal with the Expo guys. They could bring the pin in, and he wasn't going to pay any commission, right? So I was just selling it.
Yeah.
They didn't even tip me,
Oh.
right? Not even like a gratitude. Like, here you go. I didn't need it, but just thanks, you did a good job. Oh, okay. And I brought him actually, it netted like 2,000 over what he was asking for. Like he wanted to get I need to get this. So we did it, and I pushed more and got more and all that. And it wasn't really to get anything from him, but I was actually just kind of surprised that, there was just nothing. Because I pay my staff who's there with me too. And some of the tips or deals or whatever. But I was like, you Australian.
Dang, Aussies.
Aussies.
Forever cheap in his brain.
I have a question, but it could be the next topic if you want, because I have another question that's pretty. I didn't see it up there, so I think it's interesting.
Oh, yeah, go for it.
I didn't finish answering your question here. So
Sorry, Chris will interrupt it. Don't worry. Don't worry.
So the most somebody probably paid for shipping
Ooh, I like it.
was about $7,000.
Oh, geez.
Okay, $7,000.
On an arcade, they won for 1,000.
$7,000. No, it was multiple games, right?
Oh, got it.
So
Makes sense.
there's multiple games, but there's this thing that sucks with it. $7,000 paid for this. It was a 20-foot container, right? $7,000. Won't say the country, but it went there, and it was actually confiscated and held for ransom.
Mexico.
And, no,
Okay.
it wasn't.
Somalia.
Shipping container, it's definitely
But
overseas.
it cost him like an extra $12,000 just to get it out of
That
He had
holding.
to pay the ransom.
he had to pay the ransom.
I bet you that guy's like,
We have your machines.
he saws it on the side. He's like, I am the
like-
captain now.
And it was like it had nothing to do with me. It was like that country and everything. And I was
New
like,
Zealand
and I was just like, oh man,
He didn't hear it.
I'm so sorry, dude. There's nothing I can do. He was just calling to complain to me so he didn't end up in prison or something.
Yeah.
He's in a different country. And it reminds me some of these people, they buy stuff and you've got just all these different, formats around the world. Like people treat either coin op or things that may generate capital.
Yeah.
In some countries, no one's supposed to generate capital except them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's weird.
Curtis
So
had the
anyways, that
perfect-
answers your question about that.
Yeah.
It's like $7,000 for that.
Jeez.
You could deliver it.
Curtis had the perfect line. He said, I am the captain now.
Holding your
the
stuff for
arcade.
ransom.
That's why I thought you said Somalia because of Somali pirates.
That was the Tom Hanks movie.
yes.
Where he goes, I'm the captain now.
Yeah.
I am the arcade.